The more you indulge in your addiction, the more you crave that dopamine hit that you're getting. The dopamine that I would get from trying to mask my problems with delicious food, it was replaced with
deliberate has a very powerful effect on the release of dopamine in our brain and body. And is the fact that one of her patients helped themselves get and stay sober off drugs by using to increase dopamine. So a healthier form of dopamine release than they were engaged in prior to getting sober.
Introducing the hunger scale to me was really helpful to ask myself, how hungry am I? What if your best friend was going through the same situation? What would you tell them? Would you tell them, wow, you stink, you've messed up? No, if you had a friend going through the same situation, you would be kind to them, be like, hey, it's okay. That really helped me get through my eating disorders. What's up guys, my name is Kaye, and welcome back to my channel, Street Beast TV. So a little bit more of a serious topic in today's video. We're going to be talking about helpful recovery tips for eating disorders. I've been open about my own experience with eating disorders in the past. So if you want to check out my own story and kind of that background, I'll link those videos down below if you guys are interested. But in this video, I'm going to be going a little bit more in depth about some of the strategies and the really helpful tips that, at least in my experience, have helped me in my own recovery from eating disorders. So also a disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, I'm not prescribing anything, I'm not telling you to do anything, I'm just sharing my own experience, and do with that what you will. But definitely talk to your doctor, therapist, whoever you need to talk to before implementing any of these or changing anything in your own recovery journey. So a little bit of background, I am a holistic nutritionist. I'm also on the path of getting my own dietetics degree. So I have a very big passion for nutrition, coming up with healthy recipes that taste good, and I love sharing that with the world, as you can maybe tell if you've seen in my other recipe videos. So because of my holistic view, I try to approach my recovery in the most holistic way possible, trying not to take any kind of drugs or pills or anything like that. So toward the end, I'll get into more of like the supplements and maybe more things that I found helpful taking with my recovery. But I personally believe that behavioral action was more helpful in my recovery. So I'm going to go through some of the behavioral things and the mindsets that really helped me get through my eating disorders and progress in my recovery faster than taking some kind of pill. I think with any kind of addiction and trying to find recovery, pills, I think they have a time and place, but if you want to get to the root cause of your issues and really face your addiction head on, I think you need to go deep down and find out, why have you developed this way of thinking around food? And once you can discover your why, you can then start working on changing that into what you really want to think about with your relationship with food. So a few of the strategies that I really found helpful for me was, personally, I tried to mask any uncomfortable feeling with delicious food. So two practices that made me face that fear of feeling uncomfortable on purpose in a safe way was breathwork / meditation and ice baths. So when you do breathwork, there's certain ones like the Wim Hof method that really make you uncomfortable. It's not pleasant, but afterward you feel good. Same thing with ice baths. When I put myself in a cold plunge, while I'm in it, it really sucks. I didn't want to do it. It's very uncomfortable. But then when you get out or when you finish the breath work, you feel good, you feel accomplished, you know there's a lot of healthy benefits to it. On top of that, there's a lot of science on depression and addiction with cold exposure, and that's what kind of got me into it. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that is associated with these addictive behaviors.
One of our previous guests, Dr. Anna Lembke, who's a medical doctor at Stanford University School of Medicine, she's a close colleague of mine, described the use of dopamine in her book, Dopamine Nation, an incredible book about addiction and dopamine, I should mention. And the use of dopamine elicited by cold water exposure is the fact that one of her patients helped themselves get and stay sober off drugs by using deliberate cold exposure to increase dopamine. So a healthier form of dopamine release than they were engaged in prior to getting sober.
So the more you indulge in your addiction, the more you crave that dopamine hit that you're getting. And so the dopamine that I would get from trying to mask my problems with delicious food, it was replaced with cold exposure. Studies show that once you get out of a cold exposure session, your dopamine can actually increase up to 300 to 400%.
The subjects also experienced a 250% increase in dopamine concentrations, which, while not 530% as it was with norepinephrine, is still a very large increase in baseline levels of dopamine. And what was interesting is that those increases in dopamine persisted for a very long period of time afterwards, even out to 2 hours. Deliberate cold exposure has a very powerful effect on the release of dopamine in our brain and body. And this is one of the main reasons why people continue to do deliberate cold exposure. Basically, it makes us feel good, and it continues to make us feel good even after we get out of the cold environment. And these documented effects in humans explain much of the enhancement of attention and of feelings of well-being and mood that people typically experience after doing deliberate cold exposure.
So I would replace the dopamine that I was craving from my addiction by going into an ice bath. I know it sounds crazy, but the science is very strong in this regard. So I did it, and I was very adamant. Whenever I had cravings in the beginning, I would take every day, sometimes multiple times a day, just to help with that dopamine replacement. Even now, I do consider myself, in the best place I've ever been in my recovery, and I still use ice baths multiple times a week just because of the benefits, and it also helps reset my dopamine levels to keep them balanced. The next is trying to focus on some kind of mindful eating. This was hard for me because in the past I've developed habits of like watching YouTube videos while I eat. And when you're distracted while you eat, sometimes you're not even enjoying the food, you don't know how much you're eating, you can't really know if you're full or not. So in the beginning I definitely had some sessions where I would force myself to eat with no distractions, no music, no TV, no phone, and just even count the amount of times I'm chewing. Try to chew 20 times and really taste the food and enjoy the food and appreciate the food. This was a really hard practice for me, but I found that it helped really connect with my inner hunger signals and fullness signals to let me know when I'm actually hungry and when I'm actually full. Which brings me to the next point, is the hunger scale. Introducing the hunger scale to me was really helpful to ask myself, how hungry am I right now? From a scale of 1 to 10. Am I actually hungry, or do I want to eat just because I'm craving something, or because this is the time that I eat every single day and I should eat, even though maybe I'm full right now because I ate a really large meal earlier, but because I love food and it's time to eat, I would sometimes force myself to eat. And you should respect your body if that's the case. So hunger and fullness scale, kind of the same thing. Use the hunger scale to know when it's time to eat, or to help you gauge how much you're going to eat, and then use the fullness scale while you're eating. After a few bites, how full am I? Am I 7? Am I 8? Or 10 is being like Thanksgiving stuff and like you're sick. I would try to be at a 7 or maybe 8 at the most. And learning my own scale and how to gauge that was really helpful. Next is finding a balanced diet, and I'm going to define that in a second, but I have a very addictive personality. I'm a very all-in kind of person, and I do things to the absolute extreme. So I got to the point where I was trying to be perfect with my diet. I was trying to eat as close to 100% as I could with whole foods. I would try to buy all my ingredients as close to their natural source as possible. I would cook everything from scratch. I wouldn't eat out at restaurants, and I wouldn't eat anything that anybody gave me, to the point where I was scared to eat a meal for my birthday, or that someone cooked for me, or go to a family event and eat what was there because I didn't cook it myself. So reteaching my brain that it's okay to 80% of the time do your best to respect your body and eat the whole foods that you enjoy because it makes you feel good. But maybe 20% of the time, be okay in indulging. Be okay with having processed food in your diet. So I'd like to think that 80% of the time I'm eating, whole nutrient-dense foods that make me feel good about myself and align with my nutrition values. But 20% of the time, I'll indulge in some ice cream or pizza, burgers. I'll eat super late when I usually don't eat, just to be with a family or friends. And that's okay sometimes, because that's life, and there's a health aspect to life that is very much so mental, and it's also built around your social circle with your friends and family, because those also make you feel good and is also an important aspect to your health, not just trying to eat, you know, a perfect diet. Whenever I did mess up throughout my recovery, whenever I had a binge or I was having anxiety because I felt like I messed up in some way, talking to myself in a kind manner was very tough. I'm my harshest critic. I would always beat myself up and be like, oh my God, you're so stupid. I can't believe you did this. You were doing so good. You're a loser, all this stuff. And one thing that really helped me was trying to talk to myself with a kinder voice. And that was still not enough, but then it was explained to me, what if your best friend was going through the same situation? What would you tell them? Would you tell them, wow, you stink, you've messed up, your life is over, you're a loser, you might as well just give up? No, if you had a friend going through the same situation, you would be kind to them, be like, hey, it's okay, get back up, try again, it's not the end of the world, it was one slip up, stuff like that. So whenever I did mess up, I would try to talk to myself as if I was talking to my best friend going through the same situation, which was super helpful because I am very mean to myself. Having help from others is also really important. This isn't always available to everyone, depending on your relationships with your loved ones and the people around you. But fortunately, I had a lot of people that care about me, and I would suggest that you have at least 3 people that know your situation, that you're comfortable, being vulnerable and telling them what's going on, and asking them if it's okay if you can talk to them whenever you feel an urge, or you're feeling super anxiety, or you messed up and you need someone to talk to. Having 3 people on your phone that you can immediately call and trust to get you through whatever you're going through is really helpful, at least in my mind, to have my mind at ease that if I need someone, I can call this person and they'll help me get through whatever I'm going through mentally if I'm weak one day. And then speaking of having people that can help you, this is also not always available to everybody depending on your financial situation, but if you can afford having some kind of professional therapist, and ideally someone that has dealt or deals with eating disorder patients that can really guide you through this. I've fortunately found someone that I resonate with. She was there for the hardest moment, but she was also there for the good moments of seeing my progress and seeing my recovery get to where it is now. And finally, the last thing I really focused on was sleep. Sleep is just so important for so many things, but especially when you're when you're trying to recover from an addiction, you want the best possible chance to beat this. And when you're not getting enough sleep, you potentially could be making a lot of bad decisions. Studies show that when you're sleep deprived, your decision making goes. You want to give your brain the best chance possible to make good decisions and to progress in your recovery. So finding ways to optimize your sleep, getting your 8-9 hours and good quality sleep, I think is really important for recovery. All right, so full disclosure, there was some professionals that I saw when I was in the worst of my recovery that did recommend that I go on antidepressants, SSRIs. I know that there's a potential chance that I can get addicted now to that as a drug to help me feel better. And so I did my best to, I told myself I would use it if it came down to it, that it was just getting worse. But I chose to not take any SSRIs or antidepressants of any kind. But again, I'm not a doctor. You need to talk to your own professional and your own doctor before you make any decisions like this, because it could be life or death. But with that said, I did do a lot of research of some natural supplements that could help with my recovery. So for example, I did a lot of research on what can help with cravings, because my go-to, I guess, drug was high sugar foods. I loved desserts. Those were the foods that attracted me and that I craved. And so there was a lot of research on glutamine and making sure you have adequate intake of omega-3 fatty acids. So I made sure I supplemented with DHA. I got it from an algae source. I would supplement high with that. Do your own research on the dosages depending on your body size and whatnot. And then glutamine, I would do 5 grams whenever I felt I had a craving, and 5 grams before I would eat, to give my mind a better chance of being less in that mindset of craving, so that I can really be in tune with my hunger signals. And a few things that I took to calm my anxiety were CBD and kava, and also chamomile tea. These 3 are really natural ways to to calm your anxiety down and get you in a little bit more parasympathetic state, so you're not like, I'm not always like shaking before I eat. So especially when I try to go to bed, I would get some CBD to help calm myself down so I can get a good night's sleep, some chamomile tea, and then also kava throughout the day. And finally, in between trying to recover and implement a lot of these behavioral strategies, I would also educate myself in the form of audiobooks and podcasts. One podcast that I highly recommend is the Huberman Lab podcast. He covers a lot of different topics, but he actually has a good amount of a podcast dedicated to addiction. There's even some on eating disorders that were just really helpful knowing and having more information about that. And finally, there's 3 books that I found super helpful in my recovery that opened my eyes to different ways of thinking about my recovery. No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz, The Practice of Groundedness, Brad Stulberg, and Atomic Habits by James Clear. Guys, I'm super empathetic with anybody going through any kind of eating disorder. I know how hard it is. I've been through it. I've dealt with it for so many years. I'm still dealing with it today in some way. Like, it's always, I think, going to be a part of me in a way. It's just learning how to manage it and learning about yourself and the way your mind works personally. So hopefully, guys, you enjoyed this video and this maybe gave you some helpful tips to do more research on some of the things that I talked about. I want to be very clear again. I'm not a doctor. I'm not prescribing anything. I don't think you should just do this by yourself. Before you implement any of these strategies, if you're going through recovery right now, please talk to your doctor, talk to a therapist to make sure you're safe when you're doing any of these strategies that I may have mentioned in this video. Anyways, guys, that's it from me. I'm